Welcome to another episode of the Timers Playbook. On this week's episode, I've got Unjabulo that I've invited to the podcast. So Ninja is going to be a regular for a few weeks. We're going to try it out and see how it goes and if it's something or someone that we could feature. Ninja, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm just surprised you said that out on air, man. You could have just made me disappear in 3 weeks' time if you didn't like it. But now everyone will
that
know.
would just be weird.
This brother is on probation here.
By the way, Mpumalanga. No, where are you? Woodbank, ne?
Yeah, well, yeah, Emalahleni which is in Mpumalanga, but it's like what an hour, depending on how fast you're driving, 45 minutes from Benoni. Which is pretty much, or Springs, the last town from Gauteng. That.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so obviously then we're gonna have to record over Zoom. I mean, because I mean we're not in the same city, but nonetheless we'll make do with what we have. You know, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you. I feel welcome. Welcome to. Do we say welcome to everyone, to the audience?
No. Yeah, if you want, but you're doing like it's a radio.
Okay, it's not Radio Zulu. Okay,
yeah, cool, boss. I wanted to chat about, because you've been on the podcast before.
Yeah.
You know, and you've listened to some episodes, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest lessons or takeaways you've had from the podcast. So I'll start with me then. You know, I think for me, the ongoing thing about this podcast is I think every month I want to stop and I want to quit. Because it's a lot of work, but it's time consuming and it takes time for it to get going. And as it's our nature, obviously, as human beings. Even though we've trained ourselves and understood what the bigger picture and vision is, it's always difficult when you're not seeing the results that you intended for as quickly as they come. So my battle is always that I think it's this is not worth it. And then now and then I'll meet someone and they're like, no, this is good, do it, blah blah blah. But I know that every single human being on the planet is affected by a father. Even if they were made in a lab, you need a father, right? You need, for the most part, in any case. So it can potentially touch every single human being or most of humanity, right? But I think one thing that really touched me, I met this lady. She's I won't say she's elderly, but and she was speaking about her father. And this is why I do the podcast. It's because of my relationship with my father. And she was just remembering how her father was. Just like having breakfast, meeting. And I was telling her the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And she started thinking about her father, bro. And she started getting emotional. Almost to tears. Because of the impact of the father. And I think by now she's well in her 50s towards her 60s, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're listening, please don't ever. I could be wrong, but she's definitely well over 50. Definitely. Like abantwana bakhe badala, like out the house type.
Yeah.
But she got emotional because that impact of the father and how he was and how he could be harsh at times just never left. You know? And that's what has always scared me. Like, I don't want to leave that kind of impact with my children because it's everlasting. And they're going to have to do so much work to undo that, if ever they could undo it.
They realize that it's there.
Even if they realize.
There are a lot of people today who are like, this is me. And you look at this and like, dude, but there's a lot of broken there, but it's fine. I'm not going to fight you. But they've decided to take up the position of, this is who I am. Meanwhile, this is what you've been made to be by those circumstances. Sure, bro. Yeah. So she was starting to get into the emotions. Man.
Yeah, no, man. And yeah, so I think now and then something always pulls me back and says, no, keep going, do that stuff. With the podcast, you know. So I said, no problem. Let me give it another shot. I'll try this thing with Ninja. Let's see what to come back.
But tell me then, right, from what you expected from the podcast at the beginning, right, and what it is today, is there a gap? Did it take a turn anywhere during the process? Any surprises that you can talk about? What are the things for you that were milestones? There's that moment with that lady.
Yeah.
But what were the things for you? What did you experience? Because you were talking to us and asking us questions, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure also, I mean, conversations have an effect on you too as an interviewer, right?
Yeah.
Or a host, right? So what did you learn? What did you figure out? What are the things that you got? And yeah, from where it was
Yeah.
to where it is,
Well,
where
I
you at?
think the main thing is that I was right in the sense that
Nice.
nobody knows shit, right? Especially about fatherhood. Akekho umuntu
Yeah,
aziyo.
yeah, I can get it
Um,
now.
and I used to feel bad that I never read books and whatnot, but I was
Mm,
correct in the sense that yes, I think it could help. Well, number one, all the fathers did not read a single book, all of them. I've done 18
mm,
episodes, not a single one. So
mm,
I think in that sense, um, there is literature out there and there are things that could help you understand certain things. So what I learned
right.
was I didn't pay attention initially that my kids are going to go through certain stages. And when you
Mm,
get to that stage, you can actually prepare for it, whether it's
mm,
physically, emotionally, mentally, like school, teething, growth spurts. They come because all children have gone through that. So
mm,
everything to me was a shock and I was
mm.
ill prepared for it. Yeah, sometimes it's nice, it's delightful, but I'm like, what is going on? But it's like, no, dude, you realize that humanity's been around forever, right? And humans have gone
Mm,
through this. So you can
mm,
equip yourself, you can prepare for certain things. I do agree with that. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned is that we don't all have to do it that way. It doesn't all have to be the hard way. And the second thing is that on top of that, none of us know what we're doing. Every kid is different. Every
mm,
situation scenario is different. And the major thing was that for the most part, most of us are not prepared financially.
mm,
Yabo.
mm,
And even though we are working on being available emotionally and being present physically for your kids, we can't run away from the fact that
mm,
and besides COVID, I just noticed that a lot of us actually don't pay a lot of attention to the finances.
mm,
Because ultimately, we just spoke about this in the beginning. Infidelity, finances, two of
mm.
the biggest causes of um, things to break up, right?
Yeah.
And it causes a lot of tension if the finances aren't right. But it causes turmoil within you as a guy if your finances
Mm,
aren't right.
yeah.
And I saw that a lot of our problems definitely stem from that because you feel
Yeah.
sometimes you'll feel less, or you feel funny things because imali short,
Mm,
And
mm.
as much as dude, I can go to the gym and be strong and do whatever. As a dude, if I'm not new, no, that's a problem.
Yes, bro.
Yeah, especially for me. If I'm not new, yo, I don't want to I don't want to be around you.
Mm,
Yeah, well,
mm,
because it just makes life difficult. Well, one like if I'm not you get pia and you want to go out, oh come, I'll pay for you. Oh no, please, bro. Yeah, well, so I've learned. I think I
I
think
hear you.
one of the my favorite episodes actually was with your guy Ufuyani.
Mm,
In terms of money, and he said his dad, even though his approach was like an apartheid father, it was
yeah.
very harsh, very
Yes.
stern. But there was actually a concerted effort
Yes.
to align this guy and planning, structure, and particularly financial structure for the family,
Yeah.
and being proactively leading that and then taking it to your son. And we've seen it financially and just
Yeah.
that structure. He's put it together.
Yeah.
Well,
And there's
not
the thing though.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Go on.
No, no,
Sorry,
no.
go.
Yeah.
So that's the thing though. Itam Nagavi, a brilliant man, right? But he's one of the guys who got in earlier, right? In the spaces of management and business. Yeah, but
Mm,
so what has happened is he got more informed about finance. He got his financial intelligence, basically,
mm,
his financial IQ, you know. was a lot earlier than most. So Oviane got that. So now it comes to us, so that okay, what we're learning now, we need to be Vianney's dad towards our kids. You know, that's basically what it comes down to. You know, because Uvian is a perfect example of that. When you are intentional about it, which is what you're saying, a lot of us are not intentional. Sibona phambili maso yo mntana ngifuna Saint what yo that's 7. Hey, this was not part of the plan. Now it's either you're going to sell your golf, you know, and pay that 7 and get a car for 3K, some second-hand car, downgrade, or you're going to take your child to a public school where you're going to pay $1,000 a month. You decide, you know, because now, but you shouldn't have to be weighing education and your child's future in a car. But because of how we are raised, you know what I mean? So yeah, bro, carry on.
Yeah, because you also you don't want that, right? You don't want that, because now there's also the possibility that it could start to cause resentment, because you're like, now I'm gonna lose my golf laying it under so this guy can go to school, and then let's say maybe the kid doesn't perform at school, but he doesn't know that you sold your golf, nor does he give a shit that you had to sell your golf,
and it's not his fault.
Not his fault. He didn't even ask you to go to that school.
He didn't. So, you know, there's a thing that we got into. Okay, this sounds disrespectful, but kids used to say this to them as cooler when they're being disrespectful to their parents. But it's the truth, though. I didn't ask to be born. Your child didn't ask to be born. So when you decided we're having a baby, you know what I mean? It fell on you to make sure that person has what they need. It might not be Saint what. You know what I mean? So we get angry and frustrated with our kids like they chose to be here. You know, it was nice when we were all pride and joy and cigars and bachelor not, but you know, dad. What bachelor the other day.
Dead showers.
Exactly.
I don't know what they call those things. Yeah.
But it's bachelor.
Oh, it's bachelor. Wow.
Yes, not a bachelor. Yeah, siyafunda.
These millennials are gonna be the end of us.
But in essence, bruh, that's if you come to that place in your mind where you're like, wait, it's not my son, it's not Bonga's fault, it's not Sedi's fault. Sedi went to hockey now. She was supposed to get on to hockey. She didn't make the team yet. I'll say yet because she has to go trial again later, you know. But I bought hockey sticks. I bought a ball. Was supposed to, you know, we put money into it, and now she's not in the team. Now I'm supposed to go, yo, the hockey stick is oyenzani manje. Labantwana labasimoshela imali manje. No. You know, it's the child must get opportunities. I must create an environment where she gets to taste things, try things. And once again, if you get into your head that statement, they did not ask to be born, and not offended by that, but realize that, oh, the mandate's on me. It's me. I chose this. You know, I'm not for this, but you know, you could have chosen to abort. You know what I'm saying?
No,
you could have decided that, but no, you are here. The child is here. Take care of the child and stop complaining. It's hard.
It's very hard.
But it's not their fault. I want to represent umntana. Who's telling a school fees? Guys, I can't shout at my kid about school fees. I can't.
Because like you said now, because you are the one that makes a decision to send them to that school. But what I was saying for me as a father was, I hated being in that situation that I had to weigh those things. Like, I prefer to be in a situation of the Saint what is an option. And I'm going to eliminate the option because I want to, not because I can't afford it. You see, that's what weighs me down. Like, okay, what if I did want it?
Yeah.
No, but that means then I forgo a lot of things because of finances. Yeah. And that just makes it, for me, that makes this fatherhood thing even more present. Is that besides, it's not just about them. Me, I always say it's also about me. It's not just about them. It's not like I only want nice things for them. I don't want to buy a nice crib just for. I want to buy a nice crib for me too. But the reason why you do certain things now is alive and kicking right in front of you. And for me, that makes it clearer. want to talk about legacy today, Ninja. And particularly related to I think money more specifically, and the kind of mentality, not just to money also, but to approach to life and what's get left behind. And when you and I are chatting, sometimes you always tell me about what you picked up from your parents in relation to your journey in entrepreneurship, and which you give us some background into, like how your family is, where you come from in terms of istoro and business and so forth. But I'll start with me, in relation to money specifically. What I learned about imali mangisakula was that money was never around. Ayikho imali, and it's never ever enough. And even in my adulthood, I took money, the idea of money, as always lacking. Young tall. So the funny thing is about when money is lacking, ayiko, you treat it as such. I don't know if that makes sense. You treat it as a very rare commodity, but also you don't really look after it because nobody taught you. Just because ayiko doesn't mean you can't look after it or make it grow or learn investments. It's just like, it's just ayiko nje. So you operate from a place of fear, and for some reason, somehow that operation in you just led me to eventually just squandering money, because it's almost like it's not supposed to be there. So it might as well not be there. And because and rightfully so, you end up now limiting yourself of experiences, because in your head there is never going to be enough money for anything. As opposed to understanding that the little that you have, there is a lot that you can do with it. You just have to learn basic principles from the start. And only part of the work then, once you start understanding, the first thing they teach you when you learn about money is, part of the work that we do on ourselves is to understand what your attitude is towards money first. What are the entrenched beliefs, and what do you think you know, right? So some people think there is no money. Some people, because of what they saw, imali nje is just nje bayidlaphaza nje. Some people tend to be very frugal about it because of fear of losing. So whatever that thing is then determines how you operate with or without money. And once I understood that, I was like, damn, bro. Every time my wife would be like, no, like, what do you want this money for? But say and shit. But it's like with anything, really. You once you understand the beliefs that you picked up, whether you were taught by your parents or from your community or based on experiences, and then you realize that those experiences are actually informing how you're living your life. So you're not even actually making decisions. You're living an automated life where you didn't realize that, oh, snap, this decision, I am making it because it has now become part of my DNA. But now I'm learning now to reverse all of that. And formulate new beliefs about money, which is attached to your value and the things that you want to achieve. Any case,
this is true.
So what I wanted to ask you then was, you and your parents, ne? Give me just a quick background of how you guys were structured. I understand that you had a family store, your parents were entrepreneurial, you worked in the store. So just give me that background, and then we can lead then into what you picked up from your parents in relation to that.
Okay, so I am originally from Tembisa. Parents started out together basebenza bama ngemoto, bebaneshop eThokoza, right? Bebaneshop eThokoza. My grandfather had given a shop to my mother as a wedding gift, because umkhulu naye was an entrepreneur back then. Umkhulu eThokoza, Ubaba uNkosi. So he had gifted a shop ngaseNtabansimbi eThokoza to my mom. They worked the shop with my dad, bathengisa amagwinya and whatever else. And then on the weekends, they would drive out to Sasolburg and Secunda, Sasol 1 and Sasol 2. And because people were getting paid fortnight back then, right? So they would show up there on the one fortnight, bathengise impahla, bathengise whatever they could. I remember my mother would tell us that they would fill buckets full of coins. Yazi randi back then had a lot of value. Bucket full of coins in the back seat or on the floor because of just how much money they were working. And then they'd drive back to Joburg on Sunday evening and then bangene shop during the week. That's where they started out. They started hustling together. That has also imprinted my image on how a marriage or relationship should be, and I realized that's how my wife and I ended up working in business together, because that's how what I understand it to be. So they then started they opened a shop at Tembisa. They grew. They were in Natal. They had a bus. The bus was getting broken down like every week, abusive bus. And then they ended up getting a shop in Matateni. They sold the shop. They moved to a Tembisa. They started really picking up there. It was a fish and chips. They were really working. They got a second space at Tembisa, Ngase Hostel, and then they got another place at Tsakane. They opened a dry cleaner. And then later on, I was born into this environment. I mean, these people would leave the house at 5 a.m. and come back at 9. 5 a.m, come back at 9. And I was born into that. I mean, I think when I was a baby, I would spend time at the shop. Not even I think, and then I would go to preschool and my mother would pick me up and we'd go to the shop. So I grew up at the shop. By the time I was 7, I was packing shelves at the shop because the shop at Tsakane had a dry cleaner and had a supermarket. And they was telling you chemical about you pack for dry cleaning. So it would make you like you'd inhale it and it would make you high, bro. High. Like a few whiffs. So we would have to pour it into the machine because that's what cleans your clothes. Suits. It's not water they use in a dry cleaner. It's like a chemical called PEC. I don't know what it's called now, but see PEC or it's called PERC, or whatever it is in Nisingis.
Yeah.
So pour it in there. And then after like 10 minutes, you have to go outside and breathe to get your sanity back. You'd feel dizzy, and then you'd come back and then you'd go back inside and pour again. My cousins and I would work there on weekends. I think 99% of my youth, up until probably 21, I spent working the shop every weekend, every holiday. There'd be a couple of days in between where I'd be home, but in general, I would be at the shop. That's what I know, and that's what I grew up on.
Yeah.
And that's like the example I've made to you. It affected also my perception of what work is and what employment is, in the sense that I'd never understood employment. And I say this to people, and some people think, but what are you saying about the employed? And there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's something wrong with employment. I just don't get it as Unjabula because I didn't grow up in that environment.
Yeah.
My mother has never held a job her entire life. My dad never held a job. Mkhuluam never held a job. So that's what I understand life to be. So when you want me to get a job, it's foreign to me. It contradicts everything. It's not even about, hey, Bill Gates. For me, like for me, in my own life, I watched Ekaya, my parents buying cars and buying homes, moving us into suburbs, self-employment, business. So that's the environment I'm from. It was just work. Yeah, man, and that's what my parents did. They worked hard. They built a life for themselves. My dad had a Standard 3 dog, and he was driving a Mercedes, a 500 SEC. I remember I told you the last time, I used to be very angry with him. But when I started thinking about how that man came from signing checks with an X, literally signing checks with an X, businessman, full on businessman, and those are the people I grew up around. Those are the people I grew up around, who raised me, grew up around. What am I saying? Those are the people who raised me.
And then talking about this our earlier conversation, then was this something that you guys ever discussed as a family, and not even as a family, like when as in was never, ne? So we bonile nje when, and with you that stuck.
In you,
yeah. And what do you what were you hoping now in hindsight with some of the conversations that should have been had?
Well, number one, they created a beast in me, right? Then they didn't know it because I'm out here living this thing and this is what I want to do. So there was time when I was ready to take over and they shunned me off and said, go to school and go get a job. Not get a job for the business or anything. I don't have a problem with academics or school. But like they were like, no, go get. I'm like, why must I get a job? Like, nah, business. You know?
But
we have the holy grail. You know, you think about today, everyone wants to have a business that they can live to their kids. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. I was there 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and I was ready for it. You know what I mean? And they threw me out. They're like, no, go get a job.
So you're saying that your parents,
like, guys,
they willingly moved you away from what they were
it
doing.
Was my mom. My dad died when I was 9, but I have the feeling that he would have been in the same mindset. I can't blame my mom. That's why I say they, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're from the same school. Unless I would have had a different experience of my dad.
And they were saying it's because why? That kind of lifestyle is hard. And
no, business because it's hard. And I think especially in the environment they were doing business in as Black people, you know what I mean? It was hard, but for me, hard was normal. Remember, I've been doing this since I was 6 years old. It wasn't, like for me, like, you know, whenever I talk about businesses, it's not hard for me in the head. It's just like, okay. And when things do go uphill, my wife would struggle with it because she's not from that environment. She's like, yo, I'm like, no, this is part of the course. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know, because it's part of me. So when they were saying to me it's hard, I'm like, what's hard? Like where? You know?
And Shem, they had no idea that trying to get you to move into some profession or corporate, it's another thing altogether.
Yeah, altogether. And it became personal because it became about trust also. I think, you know, I've been learning, there's a book that I'm reading, the four agreements. And one of the first agreement, the guy specifically says, don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
And I realized that I've been taking a lot personally my whole life because I think it started there because I became like a trust thing. Also, you won't trust me with the business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there were no real explanations besides that. It became a thing of, oh, so you won't trust me with the business. Okay, so you don't think I can do this. You know what I mean? And I don't know how I'm wired. I've watched a lot of Michael Jordan and whatever Kobe Bryant videos where guys are like, I used that as motivation. For me, it broke me down because my parents were my hero. My mother was my hero. It wasn't some stranger telling me I couldn't do it. It was the person who raised me in this thing telling me, you know, and I took it that way, you know, and I took it negatively. And I think it affected my relationship with my mother quite badly, you know. And then I was like, okay, no, I'll go do my own thing. It's better. I mean, we're living with her now. We've moved her in with us. But I mean, for that to happen, my wife was the reason why my mother came to live with us. She was like, look, your mother's not living in the greatest space right now. She's good, she's healthy, but I don't like where she's staying.
Yeah.
And because I am my mother's child, this was the sort of response my mother would give, like, but okay, my wife is like, it doesn't work like that.
Because
my wife, yeah, but what? Because my wife was like, if it was my mother, I would have fetched her. And I'm like, yo, young coward. Young coward. So now basically I'm being a bad son.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
Our parents are not going to say.
You know what I'm saying?
Every time I don't talk to my mom for long, she says, oh, that's
how yeah, I think my excuses was based on also where our relationship was at. It was our relationship hasn't been healthy. You know, it hasn't been healthy, and we're getting it better now. But if I look at my mother and our relationship, it has never really been a healthy one because also because of the business, her life revolved around bills. Her life revolved around the business, especially after Dad died. He left us in a lot of debt. Yeah. Yeah, so I was saying, you know, when we talk about legacy, that's part of what my dad left. He made a lot of debt. Some of it was not necessary. But when you find out and he knew he was going to die, he broke and he started doing stupid things like that. Not that he was stupid, but those decisions that he made were not. And he left us in today's monetary value, it's probably 3 million rands worth of debt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And which my mother had to work day and night to pay off. People were threatening to take the house, whatever it is, the shops, and she worked and my mother paid all of that off. So that's the legacy that my dad left.
Yeah. So for her, now it makes sense, right? A little bit. In terms of anxiety, like you're saying, you start to understand both sides. That this is the context she's coming from. Although the debt, the trouble wasn't because you're entrepreneurial, it's because decisions were made. They could have been made by a person who's a professional. It could have led to the same thing. So now, for parents that are entrepreneurial and raising kids in that environment, what would you say that they need to be aware of? Things that they don't even say to their kids that their kids are picking up.
Be intentional. Number one. For those who want their kids, because just by the way, there did come a moment when the old lady was tired later on and she wanted to give me the business and I was doing my own things.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, grand.
Yeah, by the time.
You see how messed up it is now. I'm already busy doing my own things, you're gonna, and because I'm making an emotional decision and she's making a decision because she's tired, I'm taking offense to that again. Do you get what I'm saying? And if you want your children to become entrepreneurs, you want them to take over your business, be intentional. Make it clear that this is the path. And if you by intentional, you teach. I was learning things by what we could say osmosis, by experience. I was just absorbing things. But I also realized in my upbringing, learning more about money, that I actually was part of running a business, but I didn't understand money. Because the people I was working with, like we've mentioned before, were not also money savvy. They were entrepreneurial, they were smart, they were go-getting, and they wanted to pay bills, but they didn't understand the full systems of money.
Yeah, it was just survival.
And exactly, it was survival. And we spoke last week, one of the things that came up was I discovered, what was it? Was it early last year, Doc? Or late last year or early this year? Oguti, the reason why they would not hand over was because they did this not because it was a legacy thing. They did it because it was a survival thing. And their dream was for me to go to varsity and not to run a business. And it only hit home now. Oguti, their intention was never to hand over. The intention was never, they never started the business because like I said, my dad had a standard 3. My mother, I think, she had a standard 6 or an 8, right? So these people in that environment were not employable even because they didn't have they were just didn't fit in. So they made their own way through business. Let's put it that way. They made their own way through business. And this was how they were making a living. It was never a beautiful thing. That's why they were saying business is bad. That's why they were saying business is not good for you. Go to school. And I mean, I fell in love with business. So we're in 2 different spaces about this thing. So as a parent now, you've got to ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? Yeah, man, they wanted me to care. And I had already started my own things, and I didn't take the shop, which on my part was not wise. But that also speaks to my emotional space at the time, right? Not clear because of just the underlying things, that were not dealt with. So I made an emotional decision and I turned down the shop. Because it's like, and at the time, the reason always seems reasonable when you're in the emotion until you step out of it.
Yeah.
And you think it through, then it's like, yeah, but Ndwana, 2 years down the line, you're like, no, but Njali, yeah, that wasn't wise,
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, man. And so I think, like I would like to just say for me with parents, I said, be intentional. if you want your kids to be part of this business, whatever it is that you're doing, you need to start teaching them the business. There's a book called Keeping It in the Family. It's called Generational Wealth, Keeping It in the Family. This guy is an attorney. He deals with what do you call these things? Wills. He deals with my trust, and that's what he studies, and his company does that. And he's got clients under his belt that are like ninth generation wealth. That's over 100 years worth of wealth. And the biggest thing he says, he starts the book off and he says, be intentional. Be intentional. If you want to grow, and in any form, he says, be intentional about it. And I think the biggest thing that I realized with my family was there was no intentionality in growing me and grooming me. What we've seen with Indian families, we talk about Indian families all the time and why they're successful. And I've been able to let our Black parents off the hook because of understanding this, is that our Black parents start their businesses out of financial need and not out of growing a legacy. You know what I mean? So if they can put you through varsity, if they can put you through school, they're happy with that. When Indian family is like, yo, man, this is liberation. I cannot have my child employed somewhere. He can be an accountant, but he must come back home.
Yeah.
And
so it's always
be an accountant in the family business.
Yeah, it's bigger than just this quick problem that we need to solve now, which is possibly employment and what.
Yeah. And it's also identifying, right? Also identifying the personality of your child. So I create businesses. I'm the guy who starts and grows them, starts them and establishes them. But I'm not the guy who's going to run it every day for the next 10 years. Yeah. That's what my wife does. My wife is brilliant at that. And that's how we complement each other. I come up with ideas. I come up with the business. I'll write up a business plan, the strategy, the financials. I'll look for the funds, whatever it may be, put it together, and I'll get it going. But a year down the line, and it's not me saying it; it's just my behavior. You know what I mean? So in that, identifying what the Indians do, they identify, and it's not all of them. Obviously, this is general, but they identify the character of the child. There are Indian kids who, in the family, are like, no, they want to study medicine. It's like, okay, fine, but we'll have a medical wing of the family business. You know what I'm saying? Or, they are utilized. And that's what the guy talks about in the book. He says, what these families have done, and these are families in Europe. I think he spoke about the Nestle family too. And he says what they've done is they've not restricted business or the kids to the family business as it is. They allow, but they use, this is how intentional they are. They say that the principle they use is that the parents must not teach the kids the legacy. The grandparents must. The parents must go and work. The grandparents in their retirement must spend time with the grandkids and teach them how things work. Do you understand the whole system and the process of that? It's like, and I look at my family and I look at myself and I'm going,
but
I see where it went wrong.
The funny thing is, I think culturally there's similarities, because even now, it's just that our circumstances were different back then. It's like I was raised by my grand, but my mother was off to work. But that was because that's just the way it had to happen. It wasn't the intention that we need to pass on certain things. We need to educate these kids. It was just that, hey, can you? Someone must go work, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think for us, it was, like you were saying, it was because of the situation, but it could have been utilized to transfer things. And I think Gogo probably did teach you a few things.
No, there's of course. That's what I'm saying. There's things we learn. Remember, we talked about in the beginning what you picked up and what you learned, right? There's a lot I picked up from my grand, no doubt. I think I'm all better for it. But we're all better for all our experiences, whether we perceive them as good or bad. It brought us here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
in any
man.
case,
So,
Njabulo, it's always a pleasure, boss. So I will catch you on the next episode, ne?
All right, man. But